and have their true identity, and the passion and for who they are and who their business is kind of reflected in their brand identity. And so if you think about, some of your favorite small businesses or just businesses in general, I think we could all agree that some of our favorites are ones that really, like, you can tell who they are through their branding. And so that's a really strong focus for us at Vistaprint. And then also for myself personally within my role, if small businesses look and feel credible, they feel confident. And that's especially helpful in terms of running the day-to-day business, but also in terms of longer term success. And we really want to make sure that we're working and partnering directly with small businesses and lifting them up and providing that support and partnership. So we have such a big platform at Vistaprint. We have a number of different resources, and we generally want to make sure that we're serving such a wide range of businesses and owners. And so when I think about my role at Vistaprint specifically, it's really about making sure that we're connecting with those communities, getting in front of those small businesses, working with them, and ensuring that they feel that partnership. And we're doing that in a number of different ways, both from a representation perspective, and then also through a couple of different programs that I'm sure we might get into later. But so my role is really just making sure that we're having those connections with communities across the market.
Excellent. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of echoing some of Erin's sentiments there. My role at the bank is really to create a space to have tough conversations about race and gender. That's not really usually a space that banks, for a variety of reasons, fair lending, are used to having, quite frankly, but doesn't mean we have to have blinders on it as we're developing initiatives. And so my job is to put that lens on any initiatives that the bank is looking to undertake. So ultimately, I'm really tasked with influencing our leaders across the business to put that hat on, to make it easier and actually deliver change at Wells Fargo and potentially also the industry around making it easier for small businesses and diverse small businesses to be able to bank with us. Specifically, I alluded to it earlier, but my job has a primary focus on initiatives and programs that increase our ability to deliver access to capital for diverse and women-owned small businesses. So that's from a product perspective, that's from a policy and procedure perspective, that's, again, working across the lines of business to figure out where we can challenge the status quo in a lot of ways. And I say it a lot, but transformative change, it's not, we're going beyond the things that historically we've had a focus on to actually look at the inner workings, the system, and again, make it easier for diverse small businesses to bank with Wells Fargo and just to bank in general.
Excellent. Now, it'd be great to hear from your perspective, Karen, as well, how you've been able to do that, or what your interaction has been with even corporates at that level.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the other side of the equation, which is a great place to be. From the work that I do, I started this company 13 years ago, and I was the only woman in most every room I ever went into. And in the world of craft distilling, women were receiving about 1% of the venture capital funds that were coming into that industry, and made up maybe 7% of the employee base of the entire industry. So I had a lot to overcome from a very early time. And instead of just, kind of toiling through it, I made a commitment a long time ago to be very vocal, very engaged in the conversation about not just women in the industry, but just diversity in general was missing. I made a fairly well-remembered speech from a stage to about 1,500 people at the American Distilling Institute conference, and just said, we are not talking about diversity in our industry. And if you look around this room right now, you will see that it's a very white, very male, very dominated community. And so I started some hard conversations a long time ago. But the good news is that they've been very positive. They've kind of generated some great conversation and some outcomes that we can all measure, including the Female Founders Fund and the Diverse Owners Founders Fund from Constellation Brands, which is a multi-billion-dollar company that's now looking to support companies like mine. So that's kind of where I come into it from.
Wonderful. Thank you to all of you. Now, I guess specifically for Chris and Erin, if you can briefly touch on any sort of initiatives that are currently ongoing in your organization, or some that have been recently launched. I know, Chris, you've talked about, or we've talked about, Open for Business program and Connect to More, and Erin with Power Forward, some exciting brand recognition programs you have. So maybe I'll start with Erin, and then we'll get to Chris.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so Power Forward, it's a new, sort of relatively new grant fund that we've started, which I'm really excited about. It's in partnership with the NAACP and the Boston Celtics Shamrock Foundation. So we are a partner of the Boston Celtics, and so we've been able to kind of work with them to create a small business grant. And it's really a shared commitment to kind of help to empower Black-owned small businesses in the New England area. And it features, what it is it's really a grant program. We're giving away $25,000 to the small businesses. And also with that, we're also giving them the opportunity to be featured on some of our national co-branded platforms. So one of the exciting things about that is, if you can think about the Boston Celtics, as well as Vistaprint and the NAACP, there's such visibility there. And so one of the great things we've been able to do and trying to do is really give those platforms to small businesses. Like, how can they show up in these areas that they normally might not have the ability to do just because of funding, et cetera. And then the other piece of that is around giving them, design and marketing assistance. So a mix of marketing products, but as well as, working with designers that we have on their new logo, a brand identity, et cetera. What do they truly need? And then that's at that partnership level that I was trying to, that I was talking about before, which is really around how can we combine kind of the monetary help, but then also the help in running their business. And so really excited about the Power Forward Fund. I think if anybody's interested, you can go to Celtics.com and search for Power Forward. But we are sort of in the beginning stages of it. We've had one round of winners. We're, coming up, we'll have another round. And that's really exciting for us. One other key thing, if you don't mind me mentioning, is as well a program called 99 Days of Design. So we recently acquired a company called 99 Designs, which is essentially a community of 150,000 freelance designers globally. And one of the things we've done is really partnered with them to identify 99 small businesses globally across 12 countries, to give them monetary grants as well, and also to give them sort of expert design and creative resources. And one of the exciting things is we've actually been able to work with approximately, I think it's 10 small businesses from StartOut that we're really excited to be able to kind of showcase our partnership through that. I don't know if any of you are here today, but huge shout out. We've really enjoyed working with you guys and hope that we are able to kind of do more things like this in the future.
Thanks,
that's just
Erin.
2 examples, but my 2 favorites.
There's a lot. There's definitely more. Chris, anything you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, definitely. And those are great initiatives, Erin. Thank you for sharing. I've actually used 99 Design, so glad to see you guys have a partnership with them. For Wells Fargo, as Patrick mentioned earlier, the 2 I'm really proud of, and especially proud of the number, is our Open for Business Fund, as well as our Connect to More program. So our Open for Business Fund was actually created when we took the gross proceeds from PPP, our origination of PPP loans, and created a fund that essentially gave back and put that money back into the communities. For PPP, just to note, we originated about 282,000 PPP loans, $14 billion in liquidity back again into those small businesses. We're projected to have saved or protected 1.7 million jobs. So all of that is great, but the kind of fun fact that I like to share is that our average loan size was actually $50,000. About 85% of our loans went to businesses with less than 10 employees. And we're really just proud of that because it just emphasizes our commitment to kind of helping the smallest of businesses, the ones with the most acute need, especially during this time, the hardest hit by the pandemic. But from PPP, again, we created our Open for Business Fund. It was $420 million. And essentially the program created grants for CDFIs, for technical assistance, and then also creating programs that have a focus on long-term resiliency. StartOut is actually one of our grant recipients for Open for Business. So again, a great partnership with StartOut. I believe the grant was for $250,000 to be able to extend and scale StartOut services to its members and to small business owners. So we're very proud of that. But you know, the Connect Board program, the other one that I want to talk about, is a program that we launched earlier this summer with a focus on helping women entrepreneurs. And so the program really has two components. One of them is a dedicated resource center with kind of very curated content for business problems that women are facing or have told us that they need more help and resources on. And the second one is a partnership with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurship Center to be able to deliver peer mentoring to cohorts of women small business owners. Again, one of the things that women small business owners continue to tell us is how can Wells Fargo serve to connect them with small business owners that sort of are facing the same problems. So this partnership with NEC, or the NASDAQ Entrepreneurship Center, is intended really to bring the collective brain power of women entrepreneurs, bring them all into a room solving a specific problem led by a mentor. And we just had such great results from it. Right now, as we launch the program, we're targeting to be able to help 500 women small business owners through the program. Check it out, it's on wellsfargo.com. There should be banners all over the site for Connect to More. And again, I think our Open for Business Fund and our Connect to More program are just real examples of the focus that Wells Fargo is putting on diverse and women small business owners, being able to get them the tools that they need, the resources to grow their business, and hopefully all of this be able to increase their access to capital and again, be able to grow their business to where they want it to be.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris and Erin. Now there's a ton of wonderful initiatives out of both of your organizations and across the board from corporates. And I'm curious, Karen, from your perspective, what you've been able to see, or if you're looking to partner with corporate, for example, do you actively look for initiatives that acts as an entry point, or what would be your process for coming in from that side of the equation?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think one of the things I've always done is really looked toward whatever resources will give me a leg up, because when, you come into a business with your, where you're starting at a rung that is lower than other people in the business just to begin with, anything you can do to kind of catapult forward a little more quickly with a little more efficacy, I think is important. So for me, I've kind of hit it from two different directions. Internally, I started an organization called the Women's Distillery Guild, which was designed to bring together women who are in my industry together to network and talk and work together. And then we started actually to create some funding opportunities within that. I've been part of a distillery preservation fund, which helps challenge distilleries kind of get on their feet. So that's kind of internal. But I really, I'd say some of the biggest initiatives that have helped me have been like specifically funding. So I know Wells Fargo is an SBA lender, so working with the SBA, they have very specific programs for women founders that has benefited me for a decade of my company until fairly recently when I was able to pay all of that lending off. And then also, as I was sort of mentioning, so Constellation Brands, which is a very large alcohol beverage company in the United States, they have a venture arm, and in creating that venture partnership arm, they really made a conscious decision to try to highlight and invest in companies that didn't meet the typical kind of profile. So women, people of color, underserved communities in general, and to back us not only with venture capital funds, but also with some technical resources, some support, some connection to distribution, et cetera. So it's very industry specific, but I've really seen how incredible those programs can be in general for putting diverse membership onto boards of directors that are deciding about venture capital, changing the makeup of decision makers, because that's really where change happens in diversity and in money. When it's the same old people making the same decisions, they tend to look for people who are familiar to them, which tends to exclude the LGBTQ community or in general. So I've really been excited to work with Constellation around their diversity programs.
That is wonderful, and a shout out to SBA loans. I used to work for the SBA way back in the day, so good on SBA. So now when back over to Chris and Erin, I hate to have this dichotomy, but just how the questions are coming into my brain. But when you are either thinking of an initiative to empower diverse entrepreneurs or diverse customer base or different groups, and if we have anyone in the audience who's considering this internally at their own corporate, what recommendations would you have for them to maybe broach the topic with the manager, the partner of the organization, to really prove that this impact is worth the organization to create this new product line or offering or impact-driven, diversity-driven initiative? And I'll maybe we could start with Chris and Karen, obviously hop in as well if you have any insight.
Yeah, I will probably echo something our new CMO said to me in a meeting that just kind of stuck with me. It's just the fact that the mass market right now is a diverse market. And so quite frankly, if Wells Fargo and just companies in general don't have a focus on serving a diverse audience, they're going to have a tough time really with sustainability. And so, you can put the financials behind it. There's tons of studies. The Fed actually, one of my favorite studies to reference is a recent one by the Fed around access to capital for diverse owned small businesses. The data is out there to be able to tell this story. And again, quite frankly, this idea that the mass market is now very diverse is probably how I open most of my conversations internally at the bank. And there is a recognition about that. You might have to put that out there as to start the conversation. But I think intuitively, the people at the table, our leaders definitely at Wells Fargo, they've recognized that. And again, that's the reason why I have my job. That's why my team was created, is around making these really important investments to ensure that Wells Fargo has a pulse on a diverse market and continues to put that lens and emphasis on it.
Great, thank you, Chris. Erin, any insights?
Yeah, I mean, I think Chris, you covered that really well. Just +1 to that overall. I think I would say I would agree. The data is out there. I think not only is it important from a brand perspective, but it's just a generally good business decision. I think, customers, people, they want to see diverse audiences. They want marketing or campaigns, programs that truly reflect, what their communities reflect. And so I think it's extremely important to kind of leverage that kind of that thinking in how you approach these situations, use the data, use real stories. Think about the connections that these initiatives would allow you to kind of create, and think about how you might be able to use them in many different ways. And examples of that might be, I think a lot of the programs that we've been working on, which are really exciting, it's allowed us to kind of have these small business stories and these connections. And so we're able to kind of share those stories. And the more and more you're able to do that, make it personal, make it, unique to that program, I think the more people feel that they can invest in it. There's a personal connection there that's really important.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erin. And Karen, as you're building your business, and you are, uniquely positioned as a woman in kind of a vastly male-dominated field, as you mentioned earlier. How do you ensure that equity is a part of your business model? And what you mentioned starting these different groups for women in the industry, but as you're constructing your maybe 3-5 year plan, what do you do to kind of maintain this inherent part of what you've had to go through to make it equitable for everyone?
Well, it's one of the things I discovered early on was that if I waited for people to walk in the door and apply for jobs, that it was going to be a self-reinforcing system, that a lot of my colleagues would say, I just hire the most qualified person. And I quite often would say, well, then you are going to only hire the people who've had the opportunity to cultivate their skills and abilities. And sometimes we need to cultivate people's skills and abilities first, so that they can become qualified applicants for jobs. And so I started a program within my own distillery where we would bring in candidates who were really interested in the business, really had maybe some background. They were biology graduate or a chemical engineering graduate or something, and they wanted the work, but they had never been able to work in the industry yet. And so we would bring them on as zero experience and train from the start. And so over the last 13 years, we've trained 7 female distillers from zero experience to being able to either stay with us or go on and work for someone else. And we've also brought in, a lot. So I live in a community that is 98% white. I'm at 9,000 feet up in the Rockies in Colorado. And that's just how a lot of these mountain towns are. When you're a skier or a mountain biker, you end up in these somewhat non-diverse communities. And so I made a very strong commitment a long time ago that my company would not represent what was outside the door. And it's led to us doing more training potentially and doing more cultivation of qualifications, but it's worked. We're only 75% white, and we have a high representation of every different type of diversity within the company. I have 40 employees now. And it makes a huge difference when you don't get in that mindset of just reinforcing the same concept of we just hire the person who's already had the most traditional historical opportunities. So those are the kinds of things that I see really being effective, is step up type of programs where just a little bit of an extra boost is given to someone who might not yet have had all the opportunities. And it's been really effective for us.
Absolutely. That's great to hear. And I think setting the groundwork, that's a good message for small businesses, startups, to incorporate those types of strategies at the ground floor, so they easily scale up as a business, as opposed to retroactively going backwards and having to do so. Now, this has all been great in terms of initiatives that we're taking. I'm curious about the problems that you see across the maybe corporate industry about diversifying the workforce or getting to underrepresented groups in the US. And I'm curious if you could bring any of those to light. Maybe I'll start with Chris on this one, and then maybe all 3 of you could have insights on that. But yeah, I'll pop around the circle.
Erin and I alluded to earlier that there's a lot of data out there about diverse owned small businesses as a strength, but that's also sometimes part of the challenge, is just that data in the diverse segment space is somewhat fragmented. There's a lot of it, and there's not really a consistent way necessarily or a single source of truth for it. And so one of the challenges that I often am faced with as I start talking about initiatives is, what data source do I use to be able to quantify opportunities? So I think that's definitely one internally as we're building initiatives, is just an opportunity to be able to sort of have a more constant baseline around what data to use. I think the other piece of it from a customer facing lens is that some businesses just don't know what they don't know. Kind of a little bit of what Karen was saying is just that they haven't had the opportunity yet to learn about all the different programs out there. Again, I'll go back to PPP. You know, as I talked to customers, there was a theme where I just didn't know about PPP. I didn't know what it was. It sounded like a loan, and I wasn't really in a position to take a loan during a pandemic, but it was just around an information gap. And one of the things Wells Fargo did was we actually did outreach specific to underserved communities to educate them about PPP, tell them about what it was, what the resources available to come talk to a banker. And so we really got some great traction around that outreach campaign. So I think those would be the two things I'd point to just as far as challenges is in the space of diversity. It's oftentimes, especially for the LGBT community, right, there's still somewhat apprehension around self-identifying. And so that just inherently causes gaps in the data and maybe potentially some blind spots. And I think, again, the other opportunity is, and the responsibility of companies is to do more proactive outreach to underserved communities to be able to give them an equal at-bat opportunity for opportunities that are sort of available to just those that know, leveling the playing field in that sense.
That's an excellent point about data. Data exists, but so severely lacking. That's a fair point. Erin or Karen, anything to add to that?
Well, oh, go ahead. I was just going to add that one of the things I learned really early on was that in my industry, specifically in alcohol beverage, that I was going to have to do the same work in half the time because so much of the work happens after a certain hour of the night. And so many of my colleagues would be out and kind of working the market, as we say in my industry, until 2 a.m. Because that's when the bars and restaurants and different of the companies that we work with were open. And I found that I couldn't be there that late because I wasn't safe as an unaccompanied person traveling through that world. And so I started to identify in the industry, what were some of the things that my colleagues were adapting because they had to think about their own safety and their own well-being just to execute the work of their position. So if I hired, say, a brand ambassador to go out into the marketplace and talk about my brand, what did I need to think about in terms of safety, in terms of their capacity and efficacy compared to, say, a male colleague or a non-person of color who could just be out on the street in LA at a different time of night with a different reality. And those are the kinds of things that I think we don't often build into our employment models. It's like, what are we asking people to do that might be putting them at risk? And so I've worked really hard to try to bring up those conversations and get my colleagues in the business to build positions and concepts that are sensitive to diversity challenges.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Karen? Anything? I'm sorry, Erin. The rhyming names is confusing me.
keep it fun for you. Yeah, so I think honestly would reflect everything that both Karen and Chris have said. I think one of the things, and this is implied, but I'll just come out and say it, is that unfortunately, there's no shortage of opportunity here. There is a ton of underserved communities. There are a ton of challenges and issues that we have. And I think there's almost so many that it's almost limiting in that sense, right? Like, where do you start? How do you take that step? And I think, it's funny at Vistaprint, I think small businesses and our passion around that is just really ingrained in our brand. But I think what that means is that we want to help And we want to do that across a number of different areas, right? And so I think, that's reflective at Vistaprint, but also for small businesses and the communities we work and who are hiring and what we're doing and where do you start? And so I think it's really around defining like what community are you in or what communities do you want to make sure that you're reflecting, and really trying to prioritize, because there is so much opportunity. There is so much work to be done here, unfortunately. And it's all about just starting. So I would say that that's a challenge that I think like I definitely feel in my role, and I believe, just in generally that's a challenge for us overall.
Awesome. So we, before we get into Q&A from the audience, I'd love for each of you to maybe share a success story. So if you have a favorite company you've worked with that you felt you've been able to empower, and Karen, maybe from your perspective, how you've been able to either do something internally with, you already mentioned kind of initiative that you've been able to diversify your team, but maybe in a relationship with a corporate, something like that, to kind of leave our audience feeling a little bit light as we get into the Q&A. And I'll start with Erin, since you went last time.
Sure, absolutely. I mentioned before the Power Forward Small Business Grant and that partnership with the NAACP and the Boston Celtics. And I think this has been like a true passion project for me and so many of us, on the team. And from a success story perspective, I think it's just generally, we chose our first round of recipients, and, we were lucky to kind of do a fun reveal with the Celtics, where the president of the Celtics and some players kind of told these small businesses, surprised them about the monetary funds and also the marketing and design help that they were getting. And we were able to record it. And it was just such an interesting and exciting moment to kind of see their reaction. And one of the things I love about that is it's so personal to them. Like, small businesses are inherently personal. And so the way that we work with them and the way that we communicate and offer resources has to be personal in and of itself. And so this exciting sort of video and moment we were able to create with them, people were crying, they were screaming, they were laughing. And it was just so heartwarming. And it kind of is one of those things where you say, okay, like, we were just able to do it for these first round of recipients. What more can we do? How many more people, how many communities, how many more businesses and entrepreneurs can we help? And so I think that to me was personally a proud moment overall.
Awesome. Love those. Karen, an experience that you've had?
I had a few different ones that were competing. So if it's okay, if I tell two really quick anecdotes on this one.
Sure.
So, one of my big moments recently was because of this venture partnership that I'm part of with a publicly traded company, I was able to get access to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, which I would not have been, during COVID, when they only let 200 people in during COVID. And that gave me an entree to work with the beverage director of the New York Stock Exchange. And because I was, it turns out, the first female-owned brand ever to be included at the New York Stock Exchange, for them to serve and provide at, the openings of all these companies going public at all of their events. I got to ring the opening bell about a couple of months ago on the New York Stock Exchange as the first female-owned alcohol beverage company to be served at the New York Stock Exchange. So that was a win that was kind of tied into my venture partnership, which is all about female founders. But then, really, I would say the biggest win for me has been, I mentioned that I started the Women's Distillery Guild. And as we started to grow, we kind of outgrew our capacity to manage, because we all had small businesses or medium-sized businesses or whatever. And so we attracted the attention of a national industry organization who took us under their wing and brought forward all of their amazing resources. So now we have a scholarship fund that helps women in my industry to get training through the Wine and Spirits Education Trust. We have all these online webinars that help women to cultivate their skills and their language capacity, their confidence, etc. So that was just such a win for me, because as we grew something that got national attention, it became something better through collaboration with another organization that had kind of more bandwidth than we did. So
that's amazing. So good to hear. Now over to you, Chris, from the Wells Fargo perspective.
Yeah, I'm excited to share a story. Ruby Taylor, her business, Financial Joyce School. She and her business went through our Connect More program, where she got mentorship with that partnership with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurship Center. I want to make sure to get her quote right. I'm a Black queer woman, so I can't just walk into any room and be received. And so that was really sort of what she opened with. And, you know, through Connect More, through being able to connect with mentors and other small businesses, women small business owners who are fighting the same struggles, she's been able to expand her school, which has a focus, by the way, on helping families of color build generational wealth. We just know there's a gap there. It's a great niche that she's serving, and a great need that she's fulfilling. But her business has really blossomed since she went through the Connect More program. She got skills and tips around marketing, around social media, business planning. And now she has expanded Financial Joyce School into a free educational platform. It has tons of educational blogs. They host seminars. We're just really proud of stories like that. That just really take the initiatives that I work on from a desk and make it really real. And so, Ruby Taylor, if you're listening to this, congratulations on your business, and we hope to have more of those types of stories as these programs continue to roll out at Wells Fargo.
Fantastic. Thank you for each of those anecdotes. That's great to hear. Now, in the last couple moments, I'd love to ask some Q&A from the audience, and here is one. I'll open it up to the floor. But as small business owners and emerging entrepreneurs, we do not have access to the same amount of funds as larger global corporations. Do you have any suggestions of ways that we can activate during cultural moments, specifically things like Pride, International Women's Day, Black History Month, Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, these types of things? So if as a corporate, I'm curious about what happens from your perspective, and then how they can actually work with you in those initiatives from your side and also their side. And maybe Karen, if you've been able to utilize anything during any of these kind of cultural moments that you've seen from the corporate side.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting that you bring this up now, because just coming off of Indigenous Peoples Day and everything that's been happening over the last week. And I was in London for a number of events, and I did a collaboration with this incredible Indigenous bartender. And, you know, there are just these moments when I, as a corporation, as a product-driven business, have such an opportunity to amplify the voices of people who are doing the work in different ways. And so at every single one of those moments that you just mentioned, so, you know, whatever the holiday, whatever the celebration, I have had incredible opportunities to collaborate with bartenders and with, you know, different product owners. I just was while I was in Berlin this last week, working with this amazing woman from Ghana who is starting a rum distillery in Ghana. So for me, as a rum distiller in Crested Butte, Colorado, to be providing mentorship and collaboration for someone in Ghana just feels like such an incredible opportunity. So I'm always looking at the community doing the work to say, how can I help to amplify these voices with my corporation's backing, pop-ups and events and things like that. And it's been some of the greatest, most joyful work that I get to do, for sure.
Awesome. Any thoughts, Erin, from you?
Sure.
Unmuted.
Yeah, I think I think cultural moments, it's such an important piece. I think one of the things that we often talk about here at Vistaprint is showing up for these moments, but also making sure that we're doing so authentically and genuinely. So I think what you don't want to do is necessarily just skim the surface of what this could be. And so what my recommendation would be to say, as a small business owner or entrepreneur, really try to understand, like, what is your role in that cultural moment, and how can you show up and or provide a platform or visibility for others in those communities. So I think if you're able to kind of understand exactly what that looks like for you, then I would take that and kind of really try to amplify that. Work with your networks, work with your communities. I'm sure there are people that would be willing to kind of partner with you on initiatives or activities for those cultural moments. Use your platform, use your branding, use your store location, whatever that is, and really try to get to show up as a business and as a brand for those moments, but also those communities. So again, I think it's really about making sure that you are showing up genuinely and ensuring that that's getting across to your customers and the community at large.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, and Patrick, I'll just echo all of those statements because I think it's important around the being genuine, being authentic, that these celebrations are not just a sizzle in the pan. The concept of it's a movement, not a moment. And so, Wells, there's definitely a recognition around making sure that we demonstrate that authenticity by demonstrating our commitment year round, and not just in the moments where it is Pride Month, for example, or AAPI month. So that's really been a big focus for my team and for our partners, is how do we show up through the year and consistently to be able to show that commitment. And then also, I think there's probably not one correct answer for this question also, but the important thing, as Erin mentioned, is connecting with the community and getting an understanding of, I love what you said, Erin, about what the business's role is in that celebration. Asking folks from that community, how do you want me to show up? I think that's a very fair question. Because it's probably going to be different for each of these celebrations, each of the communities that you guys serve. So I think it's important that you just connect with the community for each of these, figure out how your customers and how that community wants you to show up. And then again, more importantly, be ready to sort of carry that commitment year round, and not just out, very importantly in that moment, but more importantly, I think, through the year.
Thank you. And I think we're about out of time, but if folks have more questions and would like to connect, let's end this way, since I want to make sure that everyone knows your name and your title and organization. So maybe I'll start with Erin. If you want to do name, organization, and if folks want to learn more, where they can go, and then I'll get to Chris and Karen.
Absolutely. So again, great to chat with everyone today. Thank you to StartOut as well as the fellow panelists here. I think great discussion overall. So I'm Erin Shea. I work at Vistaprint. I manage our North America marketing program. And please reach out, definitely reach out on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk about anything we talked about today or any future opportunities. So thank you again.
Thanks, Erin. Chris, then we'll get to Karen.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Galang, so I'm with Wells Fargo. Also similarly, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. My Wells Fargo email address is christopher.galang@wellsfargo.com. Feel free to reach out. And of course, always an open invitation to visit one of our branches, speak to one of our bankers. They'd love to also talk about, and they'd be ready to talk to you about anything that I had the pleasure of mentioning today as well.
Thanks, Chris. And last but definitely not least, Karen.
Karen Hoskin, Montana Distillers in Crested Butte, Colorado. I posted up my link to my LinkedIn, so please feel free to connect. MontanaRum.com, so that's with a Y, MONTANYA rum.com. And yeah, come see me in the mountains. It's pretty fun.
All right, everyone. Thanks again. I definitely got to check out that rum. And with that, it's Patrick Driscoll, again, the venture lead at BMNT. And I guess that's all we wrote for the Corporate Social Investor, how companies are supporting underserved founders. And have a great rest of the summit. I can't wait to participate in the rest of the sessions myself. Thanks.